So we are back again, and we are ready to go back to Catalina Sky Survey, and I'm very pleased to welcome another astronomer part of their team, and he is Carson Fuls. So welcome on board, Carson, and nice to see you. And I see that you are just surrounded by amazing technology. What is happening there?
That's right. I'm at our follow-up telescope station, and we're not operating tonight because it's too close to the full moon. But this is where we do our follow-up observations of recently discovered asteroids.
And I understand, Carson, then that when we have the full moon is perhaps a more relaxing time for you. But I see that you are surfing the skies every time, right?
That's right. Every night except for 2 days before, 2 days after the full moon, we're out searching the sky for new near-Earth asteroids.
And have you found something of interest these nights despite the bright moon, or you are just doing some follow-up?
No follow-up tonight. The moon, since it rises about when the sun sets and sets about when the sun rises, it excludes too much of the sky. So usually these nights we take off and work on our software or repair any equipment that is in need of a little bit of repair in the meantime.
I understand that astronomers are always at work, no matter the bright moon, no matter the clouds. And I know that you had a great year so far. We have read around about your important discovery. Earlier this month, we commented with your colleague Greg, by the way. And how do you feel? How this year is going for the Catalina Sky Survey so far?
So this year, we are ahead of any other year we've been in operation. So far, we have a total of 578 new near-Earth asteroid discoveries. And of those, about 126 are larger size asteroids, and that would be about 140 meter or greater size objects. And even 2 of those are actually kilometer larger size space rocks that come whizzing by Earth.
And I have a personal curiosity I would like to share with the audience of Asteroid Day Live, which is running so well around the globe. How do you feel when you spot something very fast, just telling us that very likely it is something also coming very close?
Oh, it's indescribable. You're seeing a small, tiny world for the first time ever. You're the first person to see it. And that small, tiny world is coming flying past our own just for a couple of days or a couple of hours, and we get to see it. It's incredible.
Yes, Latin said carpe diem. I mean, just use the small time you have to grab what you have and to do the right science. So thank you very, very much, Carson. It has been a pleasure to have you as part of the Asteroid Day Live, and I'm very pleased to go back to Joseph. Thank you again.
Yes, hello, and I'm back with another class from Luxembourg who participated at the project Living and Working in Space. And this is a classroom from Steinsel, and it's quite typical for Luxembourgish class, and it has some similarities to the ISS, for example, because Luxembourgish classrooms are very international, and they used this fact, and they created, in fact, a song about space exploration, and they sang it into, or they filmed it into 8 different languages. So in one Luxembourgish school class, 8 different languages. Luxembourg is quite proud of its multiculturalism. So and in this song there's Japanese, Arabic, Polish, Cape Verdean, Portuguese, Luxembourgish, French, German. So, and they say together we are better. So, but I have Jonathan here on my right side. What is this song about? Was geht es am Lied?
Es sind verschiedene Nationen, die den Roboter auf den Mars schicken, für Mineralien, Wertstoffe, Gold, Diamanten Also war der oft schaffen oder auch Mikroben zu ersichern.
So they sent different robots to Mars, or they could also send it to asteroids, for example, to find different minerals like gold or diamonds or perhaps other species. And part of their project was also to program these Ozobots. And Lydia has the Ozobots here. And what can you do with these Ozobots? What can you do mit den Ozobots?
Also die kann ich programmieren, also hier bei einer Tablet. Da kann ich sagen, ob ich will noch 4 gehen oder also wie schnell und wie viele Schritte zum Beispiel.
Okay, so that's something that's easy programmable Mars rovers, I would say. Huh? So it's another example for a very good educational project where you can teach students how it is, how space exploration would be like. And I hand over to Linda. Thank you very much.
Hello, well, with me right now, we've got Matt Dawson. Hello. Well, it's very hard to know how to introduce you because you've lived in Luxembourg a long time. You're a rock musician, but you do so much related to asteroids as well. And I hope we have a photograph of your homemade telescope.
Oh, yeah.
I hope we do. I hope we can show that to the viewers. Maybe not. Well, anyway, you made it from 100% recycled materials.
Yeah, this was a project I did because I love to build telescopes. And I had this idea that I wanted to build a telescope where I could go and show the night sky to the general public and to families and kids and school classes. And I thought it would be fun to go up to the, where you throw away the recycling stuff, and to see if I couldn't build a telescope only out of junk. And I did, I managed it, except for the mirror. Everything else was recycled materials.
Well,
yeah.
I've seen a picture of it, and it stands about that high, I'd guess.
Yeah, it's about 2 meters tall, but it breaks down and fits in the back of a Mini. So I call it my IKEA scope.
And people can find you on Facebook, I believe.
Yeah, I have a little thing called Celestial Adventures. You'll find that on Facebook, and as long as it's not too far away from Luxembourg, I'll go to you can put together a group, and I'll go and spend the night showing you asteroids, comets, galaxies, star clusters that explain what you're looking at. Because I've got this idea that everybody should have a chance to see the universe through a big telescope. So it's...
And not only that, but you're really wonderful for the general audience out there because you're showing us how we can do it ourselves. Even without huge scientific knowledge, we can go out there and we can even try ourselves to see these asteroids.
Well, that's right. Many people don't realise this because they read about asteroids and so on. But actually, with a pair of binoculars on your balcony, you can look at some of the brighter asteroids and you can actually follow them moving from night to night. You can look at Vesta, for instance, who we were talking about earlier. And you don't need expensive equipment. There's a great free program called Stellarium. Download that onto your laptop and you'll be able to make a little star chart. You'll find it for yourself easily, and it's so much more rewarding when you can see things for yourself.
Well, as a reward to you, I know that you've discovered a few things yourself, and I believe you've even got an asteroid named after you.
Yes, I have, actually. That was very kind of the International Astronomical Union, but some years ago I've been very active in what you call asteroid astrometry. That's measuring the positions of near-Earth asteroids. And for my contribution, they named an asteroid after me. So there's a Matt Dawson up there somewhere.
And so when you see Luxembourg, you've lived here for about 38 years, I believe, and you see their investment in space. Are you involved in that, or have you any ideas for the government?
Well, I'm not, because I'm more into the observing side, but I'm really interested in it, and I think it's going to be a huge success. And it kind of runs in parallel. The great thing is that the technology they're developing to mine asteroids is similar to the technology we're going to need to deflect asteroids, so it's win-win for everyone.
And when you see all of these young people behind us from Steinzel, which is actually where I live, by the way, have you any advice for them and their futures?
Well, yeah, I mean, I got interested in astronomy when I was about their age, and many kids do, and they kind of other activities take over. Well, with me, they never did, so keep looking at the sky.
and you see all of these great initiatives, space in the future, and we're literally in front of us we have the great and the good of the astronomical world. What would you like to go into space yourself one day?
No, I'm afraid of heights. No, but I'm the lone amateur here, and it's just overwhelming for me to meet and talk to all these professionals, many of whom I've admired their work for years, and it's just wonderful.
Well, you can inspire us all. You've given us all the chance to feel that even without years and years of research and hard work, we can just look at the night sky. And hopefully people can log into your Facebook, Celestial Sky?
Celestial Adventures.
Celestial Adventures, and find you there. And now it's back to Brian for the next panel.
Thanks, Lisa. This panel asks the question, can we survive on Earth and what should be next? Mars or the Moon or beyond? Richard Dawkins is here. I just wanted to pick up, I think it's relevant to this panel as well, something we talked about in the last panel, which is the origin of life on Earth.
Yes.
The asteroids bringing organic material and water to the planet. What do we know about the possibility of life existing elsewhere in the solar system before we talk about going out there ourselves?
Nobody knows, and it's a matter of statistical argument. The number of sheer planets, the sheer number of planets that there are makes it seem like that there probably is life. The origin of life on this planet could have been a stupendously improbable event. And there was a famous experiment in the 1950s done by Miller and Urey, in which they, in the lab, simulated what they thought were the chemical environment of the early Earth. And they found that, yes, you could get organic compounds similar to the ones which would have been necessary. That experiment is now completely unnecessary because we now know that asteroids contain exactly the kinds of chemicals which Miller and Urey found in their flask. So they needn't have bothered. It's a famous experiment, but it's an utterly redundant experiment. Now, asteroids did the job for them. Yeah. And so there are in space, we know this now, there are in space organic compounds of exactly the type that you would need in order to synthesize early Earth, early life.
Yes. And what do we know about our ability to survive out there as a species? People argue that obviously this is our home, it's the place we evolved on, so we're best suited to it. So is it possible for us to go out there from a biological perspective? And then I suppose the follow-on is, should we?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a great believer in human ingenuity, and I'm a great fan of Elon Musk, who wants to colonize Mars, and I think that the greening of Mars is actually a possibility, a serious practical possibility. And I think it's a wonderful challenge. It's a bit like the asteroid day itself. It's a wonderful way of bringing together different sciences. So the project of colonizing Mars is a fascinating project, and I think it's probably a worthwhile one for the medium-term future.
Ed, what are the challenges? Because you've spent, what, over 200 days in space. My question is almost, is that easy or difficult? I suspect I know the answer to that, but is it likely that people can live in space full-time? How difficult is it?
I'm sure people could live in space full-time, although I don't know that the desire is to live on, in a zero-G environment, a free-fall environment like an orbit full-time, but likely Mars or the Moon next. But certainly we're going to have to traverse the distance between here and there. And we do know that humans are perfectly capable of spending many, many months in weightlessness. And I'm an example of one of many people that has done that. Yeah. And we understand reasonably well now how to do that.
Yes. Pete Warden, so thank you for joining us. Your first panel, former director of NASA Ames. So to many people, I think it sounds like science fiction, human colonization of space, although, as Ed has said, we have been there permanently since 2000, so we've already colonized it to a sense. But what are we looking at in the next few years and down the line in the next decades in terms of human advance into the solar system?
Well, this is a very exciting time. I'm convinced that probably by the middle of the next decade, we'll see our first off-world settlement, probably on the Moon and then moving on to Mars. what's very interesting is the sort of change from government space agencies to private sector efforts is noted already. Elon Musk is talking about Mars, Jeff Bezos and others are talking about the moon. And there are efforts ongoing today to settle the moon. Indeed, when I was the director at NASA Ames, we did a short workshop with some of the high net worth folks in Silicon Valley, and we're convinced that under $10 billion US, we could set the first settlement up with 10 to 12 people. So this is going to happen. I think it's going to happen well within 10 years.
This is one of the exciting things, isn't it? The reduction in cost. I mean, that's significantly less than the Apollo program. But you say a single individual could afford to build a settlement on the moon now.
Exactly. I think we're shifting back to a more traditional sense where a lot of the more visionary things are going to be done by private individuals. And indeed, the survival of our species and expansion is something that really inspires everybody, but particularly some of these high net worth folks.
Yes, Mark, one of the, we mentioned Elon Musk there. He has several reasons, he states, for wanting to go to Mars. One of them is the we shouldn't have all our eggs in one basket argument. I mean, we talked about the possibility of life being out there in the solar system beyond Earth, but it will be simple life. I think we can agree there. It won't be complex life. Yeah, that is a persuasive argument, isn't it?
Yeah, and that would be exactly my argument. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. I know, Ed and the other astronauts that have been in here would be the first to say that you want redundant systems. When your life depends on it, you want redundant systems, and Mars would provide a second system so your eggs aren't all in one basket. Now, that said, the best estimate of the size of the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs, completely caused extinction of dinosaurs and many other life forms, that was about 10 kilometers in diameter. And we've done extensive surveys for the last 20 years or so, and there really are no near-Earth objects of that size. A report just came out that declared that 95% of the potentially globally catastrophic asteroids have been found, and the ones that haven't been found are at that lower end. But those are still civilization-destroying, potentially civilization-destroying events. So I think the real risk of a complete extinction or sterilization event comes from a large comet, a large long-period comet like Hale-Bopp, something that's discovered without enough time to do anything about it at all, and that's making a beeline for the Earth. That would wipe out all life on the planet, but it wouldn't hit Mars. So that's how you keep all your eggs in more than one basket.
And I suppose there are two aspects here. Having the capability to colonise Mars means you have the capability to intercept a comet as well. You need the capability to operate.
Yeah, I mean, there may be overlap in those capabilities, but they're very different goals.
Matthias, Maurer, so thank you for joining us. You're an ESA astronaut. What are the technologies that we're developing now that will enable us to start to do these things, to go to the moon and Mars and beyond?
So the next step that we're preparing is a return to the moon, and we want to do it a bit different than at the Apollo times because we want to return and stay there. I envision it like a kind of Antarctica research station that we will set up, and there will be researchers from all over the world. And we don't want to bring all the stuff that we need. We don't want to bring water and air and the concrete to build a station. No, we want to use the stuff that we find on the moon to 3D print a station, to produce our air and water, and maybe even produce rocket fuel so that the moon will become the petrol station for all the astronauts of the future that travel beyond the moon.
So it's partly about infrastructure development as well, in a sense. The other thing that strikes me is you hear a lot of people, Elon Musk again and Jeff Bezos, talking about the psychological benefit to humanity of having a goal beyond Earth. So beyond all the technological spin-offs and the insurance policy, just the act of wanting to go is something that's important. Would anybody like to develop that?
I think it is important to have that outlet for expansion, and that's historically been important to civilizations to have that outlet to want to expand into. Because if you look at the civilizations that have done the opposite, looked inwards, they've collapsed. And so I think there needs to be some component that is, looking towards the horizon, if you'd like.
Well, often when we speak about our place on Earth, you hear sometimes people say, well, it would be better if humanity wasn't there, it'd be better for the planet and so on. But in terms of the number of civilizations that might be out there, as a biologist, what is your feel, not for life, but for places like this that people can think and do science and art and so on?
There are several barriers that would need to be jumped over in order to produce this. The first barrier is life at all, something like bacterial life. And it's possible that there are billions of bacterial life forms that have evolved around the universe. There'll be another big barrier, perhaps, formation of complex life, such as multicellular life. Another one would be intelligent, technological, linguistic life. And it could be that each one of those barriers is a huge one to get through. And so it could be that that civilizations are extremely rare, while bacterial styles of life are common. We just don't know. It would be fascinating to find just one other example of any kind of life. At present, we have just a sample of one, because all life on this planet is virtually identical at the machine code level. It's all DNA, RNA, protein. One more sample would tell us an enormous amount. One more sample of intelligent life, of linguistic life, would teach us a whole lot more. It would be fascinating to come. My feeling is that if we ever do encounter other intelligences, it will not be in the form of bodily life. It'll be in the form of radio transmission.
But it does, I suppose, well, put it this way, it seems to me that we're at a time in our evolution now as a species and as a civilization where we can choose to become essentially immortal. We can choose to move off this planet and choose to make sure that we won't be made extinct by an impact. I mean, do you feel that is, in our lifetime, that choice has to be made?
Well, I think it's already made, and I think we are going to be an interplanetary species. Indeed, sort of the late Stephen Hawking wanted us to be an interstellar species. In fact, one of the things I do, I run the Breakthrough Initiatives, which has a couple key objectives. One is to see, is there intelligent life elsewhere, and then the second question is there places to go in the nearby stars? And so I think this is happening. This is the century that we leave the cradle. We'll expand in the solar system, and I think beyond in centuries that follow.
But we mustn't underestimate the difference between mere planetary exploration and interstellar. I mean, it's a huge difference. I sometimes think that the name astronaut, or indeed the even worse cosmonaut, is rather an absurd name. They should be called planetanauts or lunarnauts.
Would you like to be a galactonaut rather than...
Well, it sounds good, sounds promising.
Yeah. I mean, can you see it? I mean, you're right, of course, to travel 4 light years even to Alpha Centauri. We're talking the Breakthrough Initiative. We're talking about a spacecraft that's tiny, like a nano spacecraft in a sense. I mean, what are we looking at in terms of timescale for human exploration beyond the solar system? What are we talking about there?
We need better propulsion systems. So, and once we have better rockets, then we can talk about this topic. But that's definitely the big challenge, to travel faster.
Yeah. Do you think it's possible for biological organisms like ourselves to exist for that long, to exist solely in space? I mean, I can imagine that we could on Mars, because you've got a reasonable gravity field, you've got reasonable
and also
protection.
It's just our backyard. It's very, very close. Well, I mean, science fiction scenarios, things like, putting us to sleep for centuries to get to distant stars. Well, it'd be something like that.
The nearest star is only 300,000 times further away than the sun, so it's just a few orders of magnitude. But frankly, our ability to leap these distances and technology, I think, are within our grasp. So I'm quite an optimist. Clearly, I believe that by the middle of the century, we'll be sending these small probes, interstellar distances, and in the next century, I think that we can send bigger payloads. Now, the question is, will we send biology, or do we send machines that we are part of? That's a big question.
Is human exploration important in that context? I mean, we know we can send machines out there, probably to Alpha Centauri and beyond in our lifetime. How important is it for us to be there?
I think it's critical for the next step, which is not the interstellar step, but the step of moving out and settling our solar system. I mean, that's the whole point, is that people are moving there, and people will be living there. And maybe off in the distant future, we're sending just bits. We're sending information, to recreate human civilization elsewhere. But for now, at least, I think it is sending people within our solar system.
Well, what is the next step as far as ESA are
Yeah, I
concerned?
also agree. I think sending humans is very important for two reasons. First is humans are way more capable than the best machines. I mean, even with artificial intelligence, humans are still better. And exploring Mars, we could have done what Curiosity rover has done in so many years with an astronaut, or with astronauts, we could have done much, much faster. But then, obviously, for traveling really, really far away from Earth, we need machines because of the radiation problem and the time. So I think we need a combination of both. But people on Earth are also interested in the feelings of an astronaut, to come back and to tell how is it to walk on Mars or to walk on the Moon. So that's an important part of our experience.
Have we learnt enough on the space station now to go the next step? Permanent base on the Moon, permanent base on Mars. Do we know enough about the technology, but also the medical, the response of the human body, and also the psychological challenges?
I think absolutely yes. I think we can do this. I think the barriers are rapidly becoming not technical or medical, but financial, and the will to do it. I think the rapid evolution of so many areas of space technology has made it such that it's really a question of who's going to decide first to do it.
It's a good question, isn't it, Mark? I mean, it's easy to imagine that if there's an asteroid threat or a threat from space, then we will come together as a civilization, we'll invest. We have the technology now, and we'll do it on a short time scale. But in terms of, I suppose, justifying to the public who pay for it, the investment in colonization, is that the real barrier now?
Well, I mean, I think part of the justification is just what you said, not keeping all our eggs in one basket. But there is this other issue that Ed brought up, and that Richard can probably say in a lot better than me. I think it's in our DNA to explore. I think individuals that explored and families that separated and went off in different places were more successful. They were more liable to survive. And so those were the most successful, so they passed along that DNA, and maybe Richard can correct me on that.
Well, science fiction writers like John Wyndham and Arthur C. Clarke have coined this lovely phrase, the outward urge. And I think it is part of the noblest aspects of humanity to want to move outwards, and discovering new worlds. And so I feel rather proud to be a member of a species that is at least inspired to do that.
Do you think that there is, I mean, the specific question will be from an evolutionary biologist perspective, whether there is a, what would you call it, a phenotype, isn't it? The behaviour of the species is a behaviour that tends to want to expand rather than stay.
It's a moot point whether that kind of extreme exploratory urge is likely to lead to survival in the short term. Survival in the short term is what evolution is concerned with. Yeah. We're talking about very, very long term. Economists talk about discounting the future, and we're not very good at planning for the very, very distant future, which is what we're now talking about. And humans do have that unique capacity to plan for the future and look to the future. But evolution on the whole doesn't do that. Evolution favors short-term selfish gain rather than planning for the distant future.
Explains a lot, I suppose, doesn't it? But Pete, I mean, you've been involved in at NASA and running a big institute at Ames. I mean, do we need visionary leaders now? Like, I'm thinking, obviously, of Kennedy, and obviously there were many reasons why the US committed itself to go to the moon. Do we need that? Or is it now, we talked on an early panel about international collaboration and the fact that the world can come together to do these things. Do we need a political imperative? That's the question.
I think the question, political imperatives always help. I mean, if you've got the leader, but I think, as you said, the point is this is a global endeavor. And so the leadership is really going to be somebody that wants to work with everybody around the world. Now, I'm personally convinced that the leadership is going to come more from private individuals, individuals that have the personal resources to make these things happen. And we're seeing that already. We mentioned, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. There are others as well that are beginning to try to think about spending their own resources. Now, this is not by themselves, clearly working closely with government space agencies, working with people like Luxembourg. They're called public-private partnerships. And I think that's the new thing on the scene, but everything requires incredibly inspired and dedicated leadership.
Yeah, I wondered, as an astronaut, whether, do you find it exciting in the sense that you would go on a Mars mission? Because we're talking then about, it's a very different psychological commitment, isn't it, or physical commitment indeed, to go for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years as a colonist.
Yeah, definitely I find it very exciting, otherwise I would have chosen the wrong job. But I only want to go to Mars if I have the chance to return, and not only a chance, but or more or less like a guarantee to come back. Because I think the most valuable part is, besides exploring, is sharing this information, sharing our feelings, because not everyone can travel to Mars. So it's a responsibility for the astronauts to share what we have lived through and to share it with the next generation.
Well, I'm just interested, perhaps to both of you, the two astronauts here, how long in space is too long for you? Because a Mars mission would be what, 2 years, I would think, there and back.
Yeah, at least.
Yes, well, it's like a 500-day scenario is the fastest that we could imagine of, but that might have some drawbacks. I think you need a certain task during the travel, otherwise it gets boring. So then we talk about maybe you could cool down and go to hibernation mode. Then this travel would be much faster and the radiation damage would be much less to your body. But these are technologies that we still need to develop.
Yeah. And we've got just a couple of minutes left. I wondered if you could all comment on what is the future, the most likely future that you foresee? Is it Moon, Mars, perhaps the moons of Jupiter and Saturn and beyond, or is it a combination of those? Perhaps if I think
we have a clear exploration roadmap that says we want to stay in low Earth orbit to do the zero-G experiments, the science. Then we want to return to the Moon to prepare for a mission to Mars. These are the 3 steps. And Mars is the horizon goal, so it's not the final goal. And I believe the generations after us will decide what comes after Mars.
Well, I think we're going to, as I noted, we're going to settle the Moon and settle Mars. My personal favorite is Ceres. Because it's far enough out that the radiation is low, it's got gravity, but this is an unlimited expansion. And I think the government plans are important, but we're going to move beyond that.
It's very interesting what you say, actually, because once you have private individuals who are interested in going out there as well, then it's not so much planned as it's what the technology enables you to do. Anything becomes possible in a sense, I suppose.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I think as private capabilities increase, as costs come down, as we have this virtuous cycle of cost reduction and more capital coming in, allowing people to do more and more things, investing in more capabilities, and it all gets better. I think what we're going to see is basically our economy expanding into space. And as our economy expands into space, people will expand, people will go too, and capabilities will improve, and it will become a part of everyday life at some point in the future. So in the next 100 years or so, I'm pretty sure this is going to happen. It's going to have twists and turns. Economies are not, they can't be very easily centrally planned. People can try, but it doesn't work out all that well. But life finds a way, and economies find a way, and people find a way. And I think we'll be surprised by what happens.
Well, we've run out of time, but thank you. Fascinating discussion. And back to Gianluca.